The man who pulled the widow out of the police car at her husband's crime scene was the man who put her husband in the ground. He held her hand through the trial of an innocent homeless man. He married her 2 years later. 12 years after that, a defense attorney pulled the murder weapon out of evidence storage, and the DNA on the handle did not match the man who had served 14 years for the killing. B-Detentin. Anti-fans, you're watching Sketched Sins. The case that proved the cruelest betrayal isn't always the affair. Sometimes it's the badge. On the night of August 12, 2010, in a quiet suburb outside Sacramento, California, a 35-year-old software engineer named Michael Carter was stabbed 7 times in his own garage. His wife of 4 years, Lauren Carter, a second-grade teacher at the elementary school down the street, found him at 11:47 p.m. when she pulled into the driveway after a parent-teacher conference. The garage door was open. The light was on. The radio was still playing a baseball game. Michael was lying beside his Toyota, his cell phone in his right hand, his car keys still in the door. Lauren Carter called 911 at 11:51 p.m. Her voice on the recording is shaking, broken, asking the dispatcher over and over if Michael was still alive. The first officer on scene arrived in 4 minutes. The lead detective from Sacramento PD's Homicide Division arrived 20 minutes later. His name was Detective James Holloway. He was 43 years old, decorated, the kind of detective the local newspaper had once called, quote, the man you want on your worst day. He found Lauren Carter sitting on the curb of her driveway, soaking wet from the sprinkler that had turned on at midnight, refusing to leave. Detective Holloway did not put Lauren in the back of his cruiser. He did not, as protocol requires, separate her from the scene for questioning. He sat down on the curb beside her. He gave her his jacket. He waited for her to be ready to speak. He asked her if there was anyone she needed him to call. When she said no, that Michael was her only family, he stayed with her until her sister arrived at 5 a.m. By the time the sun came up over the suburb, Detective James Holloway had been with Lauren Carter, hand on her shoulder, for almost 6 hours. Home. At 7 a.m., a patrol officer 4 blocks from the Carter home stopped a man pushing a shopping cart down a residential street. The man's name was Bobby Vance. He was 52 years old, an Army veteran, with a long history of methamphetamine arrests and homelessness. His clothes had what appeared to be dried blood on them. In the inner pocket of his jacket, the officer found a folding kitchen knife with a 4-inch blade. The blood on Bobby Vance's clothes was tested. It was Michael Carter's. The knife in his pocket matched the wound pattern on Michael's body. Bobby Vance, who could not afford a private attorney and who had been awake for 40 hours on methamphetamine, gave a statement that he could not remember the previous night. Bobby Vance's trial lasted 4 days. His public defender, a young man named Eric Whitmore, who was carrying a caseload of 270 other clients that month, argued that the blood transfer was inconclusive and the knife was, quote, a common kitchen tool. He was outmatched in every way. The prosecution played, in slow motion for the jury, Lauren Carter's 911 call. They played footage from the body camera of the first responding officer. They put Detective Holloway on the stand, where he described the crime scene in calm, measured language. He looked, the local paper would write, like a man who could be trusted with the truth. On October 9, 2010, Bobby Vance was sentenced to 40 years to life without the possibility of parole. Detective Holloway did not stop being part of Lauren Carter's life after the verdict. He attended every memorial. He helped her clear out Michael's garage. He drove her to her therapist appointments when she couldn't drive herself. He came over for Thanksgiving when her sister flew home to Arizona. By the spring of 2011, neighbors were referring to him as, quote, that nice detective who has been looking after her. By the summer, he was leaving toothbrushes at her house. By the fall, his name was on her checking account. On August 14, 2012, 2 days after the second anniversary of Michael Carter's murder, Lauren Carter married Detective James Holloway in a small ceremony at a vineyard outside Napa. There were 47 guests. The local newspaper, which had covered the case from the beginning, ran a 2-page feature on what they called, quote, "the love story that came out of a tragedy." The headline read, "From the worst night of her life to the man who saved her." The accompanying photograph showed Detective Holloway lifting Lauren over the threshold of their new home. He was smiling. So was she. For 12 years, Bobby Vance sat in the California State Prison at Folsom for the murder of Michael Carter. He maintained in every parole hearing that he had not done it. Nobody believed him. He turned 53 in his cell, then 54, then 60. He stopped writing to his sister after the first decade because every letter was returned unopened. He kept, on the shelf above his bunk, a single newspaper clipping he had been mailed by an anonymous sender in 2015, a photograph of Detective Holloway and Lauren Carter at a charity gala, smiling for the camera. He did not understand, for years, why someone had sent it to him. In the spring of 2024, a 38-year-old attorney from the Northern California Innocence Project, named Marcus Bell, picked up Bobby Vance's file. Marcus had taken on the Carter case because of a backlog initiative. The original DNA testing in 2010 had used techniques that had since been improved upon by an order of magnitude. He filed a motion to have the knife retested using touch DNA YSTR analysis. The motion took 11 months to be approved. The retest took 5 weeks. The results landed on Marcus Bell's desk on a Tuesday morning in May of 2025. There was DNA on the handle of the knife, male DNA, that had been too degraded to identify in 2010. The new technology could now read it. The profile did not belong to Bobby Vance. The profile did not belong to Michael Carter. The profile belonged to a man whose DNA was on file with the Sacramento Police Department because every officer's DNA is on file with the Sacramento Police Department for elimination purposes. The match was to Detective James Holloway, the lead detective who had stood at the crime scene, the man who had married the widow. Detective Carmen Reyes, a 56-year-old cold case investigator who had just transferred from Stockton PD, was assigned to reopen the Carter case. She pulled Detective Holloway's personnel file. She pulled Lauren Carter's cell phone records from 2010. The carrier had been ordered to preserve them by the original prosecutor. She pulled hotel records. Detective Reyes did not need a forensic accountant to see the pattern. James Holloway and Lauren Carter had been meeting at a Days Inn off Interstate 80 every Tuesday and Friday afternoon for 8 months before Michael Carter's murder. The earliest record was from January 4, 2010. Michael Carter died on August 12th. Detective James Holloway was arrested at his own desk in the Sacramento Police Department headquarters on June 17, 2025. He was 58 years old. He had been a decorated detective for 31 years. Detective Reyes did not allow him to remove his service weapon himself. She did not allow him to say goodbye to his colleagues. When the handcuffs closed, he did not speak. He did not look surprised. The arresting officer would later say in a deposition that James Holloway looked, quote, like a man who had been waiting for the knock on the door for 15 years. The trial of Detective James Holloway began in November of 2025. The prosecution's case was built on 3 pillars. 1. The DNA on the knife handle. 2. The hotel records showing the affair predating the murder by 8 months. 3. Lauren Carter herself, who had been granted limited immunity in exchange for testimony. She took the witness stand wearing a black turtleneck and no makeup. She admitted, in a voice that broke twice but never collapsed, that she had been in love with James Holloway since the previous winter. She admitted that he had told her 3 weeks before the murder that he, quote, would find a way for them to be together. She admitted finally that she had asked him what he meant. He had not answered. On March 6th, 2026, the jury returned a verdict of guilty on the charge of murder in the first degree, with the special circumstance of lying in wait. Detective James Holloway was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He did not appeal. Lauren Carter was charged separately, with conspiracy after the fact. She was acquitted in a verdict that took the jury 9 hours and was, by all accounts, the most contested decision of the trial. She moved out of California. Nobody knows where she lives now. Bobby Vance walked out of Folsom State Prison on April 1st, 2026, after serving 14 years, 6 months, and 22 days for a murder he did not commit. He was 66 years old. He had outlived 7 of his original cellmates. He received $920,000 from the state of California in restitution. He used the first month of his freedom to attend the funeral of his older sister, who had died waiting for him to come home. He does not give interviews. If you go back now and watch the original 2010 footage, the local news coverage, the press conferences, the interviews, you will see something you did not see the first time. Watch Detective Holloway's hand on Lauren Carter's shoulder at the press conference 3 days after Michael's death. Watch how it lingers. Watch the way she leans into it, not away from it. Watch the press conference Holloway gave after Bobby Vance was sentenced. He looks, in the corner of one shot, at Lauren Carter in the audience. Their eyes meet for 1 full second. Both of them smile. They had won. The cruelest part of the Carter case isn't that James Holloway killed Michael. It's that he wore a badge while he did it. He wore that same badge to the funeral. He wore it to the wedding. He wore it for 15 years while an innocent man sat in a cell that should have been his. Tell us in the comments, did you trust the detective from the first press conference? Or did you see it before the DNA did? Handfern. And reading Sketched Sins. A new case opens every week, scrawled in ink, blood, and shadow. Subscribe so the next page doesn't turn without you, because every story has a dark side.